It was one of those mornings when the sky looked as tired as the people under it, grey, cold and hopeless. Elena tightened her threadbare scarf around her neck and walked faster down Fifth Avenue. Her shoes had holes in them. Every puddle she stepped in soaked her thin socks, but she was used to it. This was her walk every day from the tiny one-room apartment she shared with her mother to the downtown cafe where she worked part-time, mostly cleaning tables, occasionally smiling at rich people who never looked her in the eye. She was 19. No boyfriend, no college, no real plan, just a lot of dreams that life kept slapping out of her hands. As she crossed the busy corner near Franklin Square, she saw him. An old man, maybe in his late 70s, dressed in worn clothes, thick dark glasses on, and holding a simple white cane. He was standing too close to the edge of the sidewalk, right near the oncoming traffic, and people were walking past him, like he was invisible. She paused. For a second, her instinct told her to just keep walking, but something about the way he tilted his head like he was listening for something, maybe help, made her step forward. "Excuse me, sir, are you okay?" she asked gently, touching his elbow. He turned his head slowly toward her voice. Hello there, I'm a little lost. I was trying to get to the bookstore near Pine Street. My usual helper didn't show." His voice was deep and calm, with just the faintest shake in it. It sounded like he had once been someone important, but now, standing alone in a threadbare coat, he looked forgotten. "Bookstore, that's like 10 blocks from here. You shouldn't be out here alone," Eleanor said, glancing at the sea of uncaring faces passing them. "I've learned to adapt, but today's colder than usual. May I ask, would you mind guiding me there? I'll pay for your time." She almost laughed, not in a mocking way, just sad. "You don't need to pay me. Let's go." So she took his arm gently and they started walking. He walked slow. Every few steps he asked a soft question about her name, where she was from, what she liked to read. She found herself talking, which was rare. She didn't usually trust strangers, but there was something peaceful about him. She told him she loved old books, the smell of worn pages, how she wanted to be a writer someday, but life had other plans. She didn't mention her alcoholic father, or the unpaid bills, or the eviction notice tucked under their door. She just kept it light. When they finally reached the bookstore, she helped him inside and made sure he got seated. He reached into his pocket and tried to hand her a crumpled $20 bill. She shook her head. "I didn't do it for money." He smiled faintly. "That's rare. Thank you, Eleanor." "How do you remember my name?" she asked, surprised. "I forget a lot of things, Ina, but not kindness." She gave him a shy smile and turned to leave, not knowing that 2 men in black suits across the street were watching her carefully. She also didn't know that the old man she just helped wasn't some forgotten soul scraping by. He was Edward Lawn, the elusive CEO of Lawn Tech Industries, worth over $14 billion, a man who had vanished from public life 3 years ago. And from that small act of kindness, everything in Elena's life was about to change. The next few days passed like normal, or at least what passed for normal in Elena's life. She worked 2 shifts back-to-back at the cafe, barely earning enough to buy groceries. Her mum was having one of her bad weeks again, lying in bed, depressed, not talking much. Elena handled it like she always did, quietly, carrying the weight on her own. She didn't think much about the blind old man after that day, just a nice moment in a world that rarely offered them. But by Friday morning, things started to feel strange. It started when a man in a clean black suit walked into the cafe. He wasn't the usual customer type, too polished, too sharp. He ordered a coffee, sat down in the corner and stared, not in a creepy way, just watching. His eyes stayed on Elena as if he was waiting for her to do something. When she finally went over to clean the table near him, he spoke. "Elena Reed?" She froze slightly. "Yeah?" He gave a small nod and slid a small envelope across the table. "Mr. Lawn requests your presence this evening. Car will be outside your apartment at 6 p.m. sharp." Her eyebrows pulled together. "Mr. Lawn? Who? Wait, the old man?" He didn't answer, just stood up and left like a shadow. Elena stood there, stunned. The envelope felt thick in her hands. She opened it slowly. Inside was a folded note written in elegant handwriting. "You reminded me that kindness still exists. Please allow me to return it in kind. I'd like to speak with you again. Edward. There was also money inside. $500 in crisp bills. Her heart pounded. This couldn't be real. Was it a scam, a trap? But the name Lorne struck something familiar. She'd heard it before. Not in any cafe or in the neighborhood, but on the news, years ago. Lorne Tech, one of the biggest companies in the world. Artificial intelligence, renewable tech, clean. Energy. The founder had gone missing after some major scandal. Media went wild for a while, but then it all went quiet. Could this really be that Edward Lorne? She debated the whole day, her nerves tangled up, but something in her gut said go. And she'd learned a long time ago. Her gut was the only thing that never lied. At exactly 6 p.m., a sleek black car waited outside her apartment. The driver was polite, silent, and drove without saying a word. They pulled into a gated estate so massive it looked like a movie set. Long driveway, glass walls, and a view of the city like it belonged to royalty. Edward was waiting for her in a sunroom filled with warm golden light, still dressed simply, still blind. But something about him felt different now. Bigger. Not just a kind old man. He carried power, quietly, but undeniably. "Thank you for coming," he said, smiling as she walked in. "I didn't scare you, did I?" She let out a soft, nervous laugh. "A little. You kind of sent a guy who looked like he worked for the FBI." He chuckled. "I forget how strange my life looks from the outside. Please sit. There's something I want to ask you." She sat across from him, still trying to process how a man who looked homeless just days ago now sat surrounded by priceless paintings and silent staff in earpieces. "I've lived a long life, Elena," he said quietly. "Built empires, made billions, lost things that mattered far more. My blindness didn't start with my eyes. It started with arrogance." She didn't quite know what to say to that, but she listened. "I'm not dying. Not yet," he added, sensing her tension, "but I'm looking for something, or someone, I should say." Her brow furrowed. "Someone. Yes, someone untouched by greed. Someone who can help me build something new, something real. I've been watching people for months pretending to be weak, invisible. You were the first person who helped me without expecting a thing, and that's exactly why I want to offer you something." Eleanor leaned in slightly, heart racing. "What kind of offer?" Edward smiled. "I want you to be my assistant, my apprentice in a way. I want to teach you everything I know and give you access to a life you've never dreamed possible." She stared at him, frozen. Part of her screamed it was a trap. The other part, the bigger part, whispered that this was the moment her life was about to change forever. Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the echo of Edward's words rolling around in her head like thunder. An apprentice, to a billionaire CEO. It didn't even sound real. She thought about the $500 in her coat pocket, the car, the estate, the guards, and most of all, his eyes, blind but sharp as hell. He wasn't just some rich old man looking for company. He was calculating something, watching her. But she'd said yes, not because of the money, not even because of the chance to escape her life. She said yes because for once, someone powerful looked at her like she mattered, not like a waitress, not like a burden, but like potential. The next morning, a black SUV pulled up again, and Elena stepped into a life that didn't feel like hers anymore. Her first day at the estate was overwhelming. A private library bigger than the entire floor of her apartment, a personal assistant named Claire, who had eyes like ice and didn't smile once, a security chief named Owen who looked at her like she didn't belong, and Edward, always calm, always seated in that sunlit room, waiting for her with questions that didn't feel like questions. "Tell me what you'd change about this world if you had the power. Why do you think kindness is so rare? What scares you most, poverty or being forgotten?" Every answer she gave, he listened like it was worth gold. But the more he learned about her, the more she realized she knew nothing about him. At lunch, Claire handed her a folder. "Start reading," she said flatly. Inside were documents, complex ones. Business plans, legal agreements, investment reports. Elena stared at the pages like they were in another language. "I'm not really qualified for this," she admitted, embarrassed. Edward smiled softly. "Yet." For hours she tried. She Googled terms under the table, scribbled notes like a student cramming for finals. She didn't want to look dumb. She didn't want to fail him. By day's end, her brain felt like mush. She sat on a bench in the estate's quiet garden, trying to breathe. That's when Owen appeared. "Don't take this the wrong way," he said bluntly, "but girls like you don't last here." She blinked. "Excuse me." "I've seen this before. He finds someone pure, brings them in, plays his little experiment. But when the novelty wears off, you'll be gone, just like the others." She stood slowly, fire rising in her chest. "I didn't come here to play games, and I'm not like anyone you've seen before." He smirked. "We'll see." That night, Edward asked her to sit beside him again. "Don't let them get to you," he said, as if he'd overheard it all. "Why me?" she asked finally. "Out of all people. Why would a billionaire care about a girl who cleans coffee tables and can't even understand a business report?" He turned his face toward her voice, and for a moment he looked tired, not old, just deeply, soulfully tired. "Because money made me blind, Elena. Not my eyes. I lost my son, my marriage, my reputation chasing things that don't matter. I don't want to end my life with regrets stacked higher than my profits." He paused. Then, with calm weight in his voice, said, "You're not here because you're perfect. You're here because you're honest. You remind me of who I used to be before I became what the world made me." Elena didn't know what to say. But in that moment, something shifted in her. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was becoming. But what she didn't see, across the city, in a high-rise boardroom, was a woman in a blood-red suit, watching Eleanor's photos slide across a digital screen. Her eyes were cold, her smile razor-sharp. "She's the girl?" the woman asked. "Yes," a man beside her said. "Edward's protégé. Found her last week." The woman leaned forward. "Good. Then she's the weakness we'll use to destroy him." The next few weeks moved fast, faster than anything Elena had ever known. Her morning started at 6 a.m. sharp with business lessons from Claire, stone-faced and surgical, like she was training a soldier, not a girl from the gutter. Edward insisted on it. "No title is earned without the pain that comes with it," he'd said. By afternoon, she was shadowing Edward in private meetings. Investors, scientists, world leaders, ex-politicians, they all came, dressed in sharp suits and veiled smiles. She watched as Edward guided billion-dollar conversations, like a maestro, but always stayed seated, quiet and appearing fragile. That was the trick. They underestimated him the moment they saw the cane, and Elena learned to do the same. Sit quiet, listen hard, and always look where no one else was looking. But the whispers started not long after. It began with sideways, glances from staff. Then one afternoon, as she passed by the estate's kitchen, she heard Claire's voice, low and bitter. "She's not ready. She's a liability." Then another voice replied, too quiet to make out. But the word distraction landed hard. Elena tried not to let it get to her. She reminded herself this wasn't charity. Edward saw something in her, something she didn't even fully understand yet, until one night he handed her a key. "A gift," he said simply. "Top floor, east wing, it's yours now." She stared at the ornate silver key in disbelief. "My own room?" He smiled. "No, Eleanor, your own suite." The room was bigger than her entire apartment building. Marble floors, a walk-in, closet with clothes she hadn't even dreamed about, a view of the city skyline that felt like it belonged in a dream. And on the bed, a brand new laptop with a handwritten note on top. "Build something, anything. Just make it yours." That night, for the first time in her life, she cried not because of pain, but because someone believed in her enough to give her space to imagine. But not everyone was celebrating. In that same moment, across the estate, Owen met with the woman, in the red suit, Celeste Marlowe, Edward's ex-partner turned corporate predator. She built half the company with him and spent the last decade trying to dismantle him. "She's getting too close," Owen said stiffly. "He's grooming her for something bigger." Celeste sipped her wine slowly, unbothered. "Then we tear her down before she becomes useful. She's just a girl, no power." Celeste's lips curled into a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "She has his trust. That's all. The power she needs. And if I can't break Edward directly, I'll make him watch while I ruin the only pure thing he's clinging to." Back at the estate, Elena sat at the edge of the massive bed, typing away on her new laptop. She was building something small, a digital library app. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. That's when an alert popped up. Private email. Subject: "You're in danger." She stared at the screen, confused. The sender's name was hidden. Just an anonymous string of numbers and letters. "You think this is about kindness? It's not. He's using you. And soon you'll be the reason he loses everything." Her hands shook slightly. She looked around the room, half expecting someone to be watching her. Was it a threat? A warning? Or worse, was it the truth? The next morning, Elena didn't bring up the email. She told herself it was spam, some troll, maybe even a jealous employee. But deep down, a cold knot had formed in her stomach, and it refused to loosen. She started noticing things, subtle, quiet things, like the way Owen never looked her in the eye anymore, or how Claire's instructions became shorter, colder, as if Elena was wasting her time. Even Edward, kind as ever, seemed guarded, not distant exactly, but selective, every word carefully measured like he was walking on glass. But when she opened her laptop again, the email was gone. No trace, no draft, no sender. Like it had never existed. And that scared her more than the message itself. By the end of the week, Edward invited her into a meeting she had no business attending, a private, high-stakes strategy session with global investors. She walked in behind him like a shadow, in borrowed heels and a second-hand blazer that Claire loaned her without emotion. The room was cold, sterile, made of chrome and glass. Men and women who could bankrupt countries sat around the table, sipping $1,000 wine and making six-figure jokes like they were nothing. When Edward introduced her, there were a few raised eyebrows, but most people just ignored her. Just another assistant, another pet project. She liked it that way until he walked in. The man was tall, handsome in a surgical kind of way, sharp blue eyes, an empty smile, and a voice as smooth as oil. "Celeste's lead counsel," Edward whispered to her. "Mason Drake." He greeted Edward like an old friend, but there was venom behind his grin. His eyes flicked to Elena, lingered just long enough to sting, and then moved on. The meeting was about a merger. One Edward wanted to kill and Celeste wanted to push through, because it would give her majority control of a Lorntech subsidiary Edward still privately backed. Elena didn't understand every detail, but she watched the energy shift, the tension pulse. These people weren't talking business. They were fighting a war in polite words. And then Mason spoke directly to Elena. "So, Ms. Reed," he said, casually, "what's your role here exactly?" The entire room turned to her, just like that. She froze. I'm assisting Mr. Lorne, learning, shadowing," she said carefully. He smiled like a shark. "Ah, learning from the best. Though, I hope you're also learning to read contracts better than your past suggests. I did some digging." Her blood went cold. "You were evicted last year, weren't you?" he continued. "Grew up around Eastbrook slums, dropped out of college. Father disappeared after 2 DUIs. That's correct?" Edward straightened slightly. "That's enough, Mason." But Mason didn't stop. "Just trying to understand what qualifies someone like her to sit at this table, Edward." Elena's hands clenched in her lap. She wanted to scream, to cry, to vanish. But then she remembered what Edward told her once. "They can only take what you give them." She sat up straighter. "You're right, I have no qualifications on paper. But if you think that means I'm not paying attention, you're underestimating me. And that's what weak men do." The room fell silent. Mason chuckled, but he looked away first. After the meeting, Edward didn't say anything. He just touched her shoulder gently and walked away. But Claire approached her as Elena stood outside the conference room, still shaking. "You handled that well," Claire said softly. Elena didn't respond. Claire leaned closer. "But you need to understand something. This world doesn't care how kind you are, or how hard you work. It only cares what you're worth to the people who already own it." That night, back in her suite, Eleanor found a second email, same anonymous sender. "They're testing. Celeste wants to break you before she breaks him. They'll dig into everything. And when they find what they're looking for, you won't just lose this job. You'll wish you'd never helped him at all." Underneath the message was an attachment. She clicked it. It was a photo of her mother in her apartment, alone, vulnerable. The date on the file, today. Her blood ran cold. Eleanor stared at the screen, her breath shallow. The picture of her mother wasn't blurry or stolen from some public post. It was taken through their apartment. Window close, precise. Today's newspaper was lying on the table next to her mom's chair. This wasn't a threat. It was a promise. She paced the suite like a trapped animal, her heart pounding so hard she could barely think. She didn't have friends she could call. No one would believe her if she went to the police. Who was she going to tell? That she was living in a billionaire's mansion and being targeted by one of the world's most powerful corporate predators? Every possible option felt like a dead end. So she went to the only person who might be able to do something. Edward. It was almost midnight when she knocked on the door to his private study. A guard tried to stop her, but Edward's voice came through the thick mahogany before he even saw her. "Let her in." He was alone, surrounded by a sea of books and dim golden light. His fingers were tracing braille across a leather-bound journal. But the moment she stepped in, he knew something was wrong. "I got a second email," she said, her voice cracking despite herself. This time, it wasn't just a warning. She showed him the picture. For the first time since she'd known him, Edward's jaw tightened. His expression didn't change much, but the air around him shifted, like something ancient had stirred inside him. "Celeste," he said under his breath. "She's moving faster than I thought." Eleanor's voice rose. "They're watching my mother. This isn't business anymore. They're using her against me. I don't want her hurt because I tried to build something better." Edward stood slowly, steadying himself with his cane. "Then we won't let them," he said. "From this moment on, your mother will be protected. I'll move her to one of our private residences, somewhere no one can reach without going through me." Elena blinked. "You'd do that?" He turned toward her. "You helped me when I had nothing to offer. I don't forget that, Elena. Ever." True to his word, by sunrise her mother was moved. Not even told why, just told that someone had offered them a safe place to stay. Elena spoke to her briefly on the phone. Her mum was confused but calm. For the first time in a long time she sounded safe, but the pressure didn't stop. In the following days, the emails didn't. Come again, but the stares got colder. Claire stopped talking altogether unless it was about work. Owen began monitoring her movements, asking where she was going, who she was speaking to. And the media? Suddenly, Elena's name appeared in a few shady business blogs. No last name. No confirmation, just whispers like, "Edward Lorne seen with mystery assistant, too young to be business only. Is the ex-billionaire grooming a new partner?" It felt like fire spreading through dry leaves, slow then all at once. Edward warned her gently. "They'll try to poison public opinion. If they can't scare you out, they'll shame you out." But Elena didn't back down. She showed up every morning. She kept working, kept learning, even when her hands shook from the inside out, because for once she had something worth fighting for, a future that didn't end in debt and dead ends. But then one night, everything shattered. She was walking through the estate garden trying to clear her head. That's when she heard voices behind the hedge wall near the koi pond. Owen and Claire. "You really think she's going to survive this?" Claire said, bitter. Edward's making decisions with his heart, not his head. Owen answered flatly. "She's just a pawn, but Celeste knows how to flip pawns into knives." Then Claire said something that froze Elena to the bone. They won't just destroy her. They are going to offer her something, a deal, and if she takes it, Edward's finished. Elena didn't hear the rest. She backed away, heart thudding. Because that meant one thing. Celeste didn't just want to break her, she wanted to turn her. And worst of all, Eleanor wasn't sure what she would do if the offer came. It came the next night. She was in her suite, staring at a blank document on her laptop, trying to stay focused. But her thoughts were heavy, dark, circling. Like vultures, that's when her phone lit up. Unknown number, one message. Meet me, no guards, no noise, rooftop, 10 minutes. Her chest tightened. Celeste. Elena hesitated, then slipped on her coat and left through the back stairwell, quietly, just as the message had instructed. By the time she stepped onto the estate rooftop, the wind was cutting sharp and cold. The city glimmered beneath her, unaware of what was about to unfold. Celeste was already waiting. Red suit, perfect hair. She looked like power itself, polished and poisonous. "Hello, darling," she said, not even turning. "You're braver than I thought, or maybe just more desperate." Eleanor stayed silent. Celeste turned, smiling. "You've come a long way from cleaning spilled coffee. I'll give Edward credit for spotting you, but he doesn't know what you are yet, does he?" "I'm not here to be insulted," Elena said, her voice even. Celeste chuckled. "No, you're here because you want to know what happens next." She reached into her coat and pulled out a thin black folder. Inside were papers, bank transfers, stock options, credentials, and a photo of Elena, in a penthouse office, her name stamped under the title Senior Vice President of a tech firm she'd never heard of. "You can walk away from him tonight," Celeste said. "I'll wire $5 million into an account of your choosing. The job is real, the title is yours. You won't ever be poor again. You'll have power, autonomy, and no strings. All I ask—" Elena raised an eyebrow. "There's always an ask." Celeste's smile sharpened. "Is that you disappear from Edward's life quietly. No drama, no goodbyes. Just gone." Silence. The city below felt like another planet. "I know you think this is about loyalty," Celeste continued. "But loyalty doesn't pay hospital bills. It doesn't save broken mothers. It doesn't fix the future you don't have. He's already a ruined man. He just hasn't realized it yet. Walk away before he drags you under with him." Elena looked at the folder again, her name, her face. A life she could never build on her own. Celeste stepped closer. "You're not built for his world, Elena. You think he's saving you. No. You're his penance, a symbol. He needs you to feel good about himself. But people like us, we don't need saving. We need strategy." Something in her words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were tempting. And Elena hated that part of herself, the one that wanted to take it, the one that thought of her mother, of all the people who'd laughed at her, stepped over her, of never feeling afraid again. But then she pictured Edward, not in his chair, not with his cane, but the day he sat in the garden and said, "You remind me of who I used to be." He didn't need a symbol. He needed a soldier. Eleanor slowly closed the folder and held it out. "Tell your people," she said quietly. "They'll have to come harder than that." Celeste didn't flinch. "So you choose him?" "No," Eleanor said, eyes locked with hers. "I choose me, and you don't get to decide what that looks like." She dropped the folder at Celeste's feet and walked away without looking back. But as she disappeared down the stairwell, Celeste's smile returned, because she wasn't done yet. Back in the estate, Edward was waiting. He hadn't moved, but when she walked in, he knew. "You met her," he said softly. Eleanor sat across from him and nodded. "She offered me everything," she whispered, "and I thought about taking it." Edward turned his face toward her voice, his expression unreadable. "Good," he said finally, "because the only people I trust in this life are the ones who know exactly what they're capable of and still choose to stay." But they both knew this wasn't over. Celeste had made her move. Now it was their turn. The day started. Quiet. too quiet. Elena woke up with a strange calm in her chest, like her body knew what was coming before her mind did. The air in the estate was different, tense. Staff moved with urgency. Claire was nowhere to be found. Owen passed her in, the hallway without a word. And Edward, he was waiting in the library, already dressed, hands folded over his cane like he was sitting on the edge of a cliff. "Eleanor," he said, not with his usual warmth, but something colder. He didn't smile, didn't even nod. "What's happening?" she asked, nerves rising. "There's a vote today," he replied, voice low. "The final move. Celeste is forcing the board's hand. She wants my last remaining shares stripped, under the guise of mental incapacity." Elena blinked. "What? She's trying to have you declared incompetent? She's spent years building this moment," he said, "and today she thinks she wins." "Then what do we do?" she asked, stepping forward. He hesitated. "You're the key." "What?" "I've been quietly transferring power, behind the scenes. You've been learning not just business, but influence, strategy, access. They laughed at the idea of you. Called you an assistant, a distraction. But what they didn't know is you're listed as my executive proxy. If I'm declared unfit, my vote transfers to you." Elena's heart nearly stopped. "You gave me your vote?" she whispered. Edward nodded. "You were never a project, Elena. You were my contingency." It all made sense now. The emails, the fear, Celeste's desperation. She hadn't wanted to buy Elena's silence. She wanted to erase her from the boardroom, because she was the one person Celeste hadn't planned for. They arrived at the Lawn Tech headquarters just before noon. Eleanor walked beside Edward like a different version of herself, clean-cut, focused, unshakable. Claire appeared in the conference room already seated, but her eyes were different. Tired, ashamed. The boardroom filled with power. Lawyers. Investors. Vultures in silk. Celeste arrived last, wearing that same blood-red suit, her smile lazy like the game was already won. "Let's begin," she said. The meeting was brutal. They questioned Edward's mental state, his leadership, his past scandals. They brought up health reports, doctored data, even an old audio clip twisted out of context. Edward sat silent, through it all unmoved, until Celeste finally leaned forward, voice full of sweet poison. "Edward, the company deserves better. It's time to let go. We'll take care of it now." That's when he nodded, just once. "Eleanor," he said, turning his face toward her. "It's time." All eyes turned, some faces confused, others panicked. Celeste sat upright, suddenly alert. Elena stood. "Mr. Lorne has named me his voting proxy, effective immediately," she said. "Clause 14B of the Charter gives him that right. I hold his vote now, and I vote no to the motion." Dead silence, then murmurs, then outrage. "That's not valid. She's not even qualified. She's a child." Eleanor raised a hand, steady and calm. "I may not be one of you, but I've learned from the man who built this empire while half of you were playing games with other people's money. I know what integrity looks like, what vision sounds like, and it doesn't wear red lipstick and hide behind lawyers." Her voice sharpened. "You tried to break me. You watched my family. Threatened my life. You underestimated me, and that's what will bury you." Celeste stood, face twisted. "This isn't over." "No," Elena said. "It's just over for you." In the chaos that followed, the motion collapsed. The board fractured. Celeste was removed from the room, and Edward, for the first time in years, stood up without his cane. Slowly, shakily, but proud. He didn't need to say it. Eleanor knew. She had won. Later that evening, they sat on the rooftop again. The air was cooler, softer. "You changed everything," Edward said. "No," Elena replied. "You just gave me the chance to prove I could." He smiled, tired but peaceful. "You remind me of my wife," he whispered. "Before the world made us cruel." They sat in silence after that. Just the skyline, just peace. Elena never took the money Celeste offered. She never sold her soul. But she did take something else. Her power, her place, her future. because in the end, she wasn't. Just the girl who helped a blind old man. She was the one who made them all see.